In 1965, archaeologists digging in Ukraine found something that stopped them cold. A house, not a cave, not a lean-to. A fully constructed shelter built from the bones of 149 woolly mammoths, assembled with such precision that it had survived intact for 15,000 years. The roof had been covered in mammoth hide. The floor had been lined with it. Inside, they found 5 fireplaces arranged in a deliberate pattern. Evidence of tools, evidence of meals, evidence of people who were not merely surviving the Ice Age. They had turned it into a home. Most people, when they think about Ice Age survival, imagine the same thing. Primitive people huddled in caves, wrapped in loose animal skins, barely making it through each night. One bad winter from extinction. That picture is not wrong. It is just nowhere near the full story. The Ice Age your ancestors survived, specifically the last glacial maximum, which peaked around 20,000 years ago, was not a slightly colder version of modern winter. It was a fundamentally different planet. Ice sheets 2 miles thick covered most of northern Europe and North America. So much water was locked into glaciers that sea levels were 120 meters lower than they are today. Britain was not an island. It was connected to Europe by a vast frozen plain. The English Channel did not exist. The North Sea was tundra, and across all of it, temperatures ran between 6 and 12 degrees colder than anything alive today has ever experienced. To put that in perspective, 6 degrees of warming is what climate scientists consider a potential civilizational catastrophe in the other direction. Your ancestors were living on the wrong side of that number. Every single day, the animals that shared that world with them were not the animals you know. Woolly mammoths stood 4 meters tall and weighed 6 tons. Woolly rhinoceroses roamed the European steppe. Cave lions, 30% larger than any lion alive today, hunted the same plains your ancestors hunted. Cave bears, bigger than any bear currently living, competed for the same shelters. Your ancestors were not at the top of this food chain by default. They had to claw their way there. And the primary tool they used was not a weapon. It was a needle. In 2016, researchers at Denisova Cave in Siberia found a sewing needle carved from a single bird bone. It was 50,000 years old, 7 centimeters long, with a hole drilled through one end with a precision that challenges modern tools. That needle changed everything we thought we knew about Ice Age survival. Because the reason humans survived temperatures that should have killed them is not fire. Fire helped. Fire was essential. But fire cannot follow you across an open plain when you are tracking a herd. Fire cannot protect you when wind is running at 60 kilometers an hour across frozen tundra with nothing to break it for 100 miles in any direction. Clothing can. Not the loose animal skins most people picture. Tailored, layered, fitted clothing, engineered specifically to trap body heat while allowing movement. The needle meant seams. Seams meant fitted garments. Fitted garments meant that a human body could be sealed against the cold the same way a modern thermal jacket seals you. Your ancestors were not wearing blankets. They were wearing the most sophisticated cold weather survival technology their world had access to. And they had invented it themselves, from scratch, with no instruction. But clothing alone does not explain the Mammoth Bone House. The site at Mazhirish in Ukraine was not a temporary shelter. It was a settlement. The bones had been arranged according to a precise architectural plan. Mammoth skulls formed the base. Leg bones were stacked in interlocking patterns to build walls. The entire structure was engineered to withstand the wind load of an open steppe winter. People did not stumble into this. They designed it, and inside, across those 5 fireplaces, they were processing mammoth fat specifically, rendering it down, preserving it in a form that could be stored through the months when hunting was impossible. Fat was the difference between life and death. The human brain runs almost entirely on fat when there are no carbohydrates. Your ancestors drove toward the fattiest parts of every kill. They cracked long bones open for marrow. They took organs first: liver, heart, kidneys, brain, because organs are calorie-dense in a way that muscle tissue never is. Every craving your body has for rich food today was calibrated in exactly this environment. But here is the part that is genuinely difficult to explain. At the height of the last glacial maximum, when temperatures were at their lowest, when food was at its scarcest, your ancestors painted. The cave paintings at Lascaux in France are 17,000 years old, made in the middle of the Ice Age. Hundreds of animals rendered with anatomical accuracy that has never been explained by survival necessity alone. Some image were painted in chambers so deep inside the cave that the painters had to navigate hundreds of meters of total darkness, carrying lamps made of animal fat, just to reach the wall. Nobody who is purely focused on staying alive goes that far into a cave to make art. The Chauvet cave paintings are 37,000 years old, even deeper into the Ice Age. The technique already shows mastery. Shading, perspective, motion captured in a single brush stroke. Skills that require time to develop. Time that, in a world this brutal, had to be consciously chosen over every other possible use of the day. They were not just surviving. They were building stories, building identity, building something that survival alone cannot account for. So here is what Ice Age survival actually was. For 20,000 years, your ancestors lived at the edge of what a human body can physically endure. They engineered shelters from the bones of the largest animals on Earth. They invented fitted cold-weather clothing when the alternative was death. They developed food preservation strategies that kept entire communities alive through winters with no hunting. They passed all of this, every technique, every piece of knowledge, not in writing, but in demonstration, in practice, in story, across hundreds of generations, in an unbroken chain that reached, eventually, you. Not one link in that chain broke. Every single one of your ancestors made it through the Ice Age. Everyone. By definition, because you are here, and somewhere in the middle of the worst conditions any human population has ever survived. Someone took an oil lamp made of mammoth fat, walked hundreds of meters into the back of a cave where no light had ever reached, and painted a horse on the wall. Not because it helped them survive, because they were already doing more than surviving. And they knew it.